You want me to read?
Okay, so we are starting the halachas of Chanukah. We're going to start with Siman in Siman Kuf Lametes. It's one Siman. There's a lot to talk about. Hopefully, we will be able to cover as much as we can. So stay with us. Regarding Chanukah, in the Shulchan Aruch before the Shulchan Aruch in the Rishonim, like for example the Tur and the Rambam, the way they describe Chanukah is they call it about the mitzvahs of Chanukah. They say number one, Lizar Ma'od. Could you both? They call it Lizar Ma'od, which means that it's that you should be very careful regarding the mitzvah of Chanukah, which is a unique expression to you. Continue. So that is the expression that the Torah uses to describe Chanukah. And then you have the way the Rambam says is he says it's a mitzvah chaviva hi ad ma'od, that it's a very precious type of mitzvah, that's a very unique type of mitzvah. Which also, so these are expressions that are used in the Rishonim that you don't see generally used for other mitzvahs. You don't see this expression of chaviva hi ad ma'od. You don't see the expression of the zar ma'od. You don't see these types of expressions because Chanukah, there's something very special about Chanukah. So the Poskim also say about Chanukah that if someone is careful about the lights of Chanukah, they're going to be zeicha that their children will be Talmidei Chachamim. So obviously, all of your parents are very careful about the mitzvah of Chanukah because everyone here is Talmid Chacham, right? So that's how it works. And obviously, it's a very unique type of mitzvah. B'chlal, if you go around and you ask someone in America, any Yid or even Lavdil, not a Yid, you ask them, what do you know, what's a Jewish holiday? They'll say Chanukah. They'll know Chanukah even before they know Shavuos. And Shavuos is one of the big three, right? Shavuos is one of the Shalosh Regalim. It's a mitzvah midaraisa or Yom Tov deraisa. But that people don't know of. Sukkot, people don't know. But when you talk about Chanukah, everyone knows Chanukah. Now, some of it is a technical thing. The time of year that it falls out is a season of the secular end of the year plus other types of things. So what ends up happening is that it becomes a little bit more popular because of that. But obviously, that's not the way it works. It's obviously something much more real to it, which is that it's a mitzvah that, especially if you learn the Hasidus behind it, of what it represents, the idea that it's like oil, that it kind of spreads out everywhere and it gives us, it's much more of a pneumistic type of mitzvah. So there's obviously a lot of depth to it, but that's the way it is. But either way, the point is that it's a very special mitzvah. We know that in Chabad, even though, like I said, Chanukah in theory is not such a big mitzvah, or such a big Yom Tov rather, but at the same time, it's probably one of the biggest mitzvahs that Shulchan or Chabad are involved with, and Bachim going on mitzvahim, and the idea of pursuing Nisa, just to get out there, to be seen, to spread the message of Chanukah, which is not only, obviously it's geared towards Yidden mainly, but it's just the universal type of message in general of the whole of what everyone can relate to. So it definitely has a lot of room to be able to accomplish good things in the world. And there's always, every year, we always need more good things, especially more light. So it's a very appropriate type of mitzvah. So let's start. The beginning, we'll start off what we'll do today. We'll cover the first couple of sifim, and then we'll go to Chazara of the Gemara. So I'll tell you after where we're going to hold there. The beginning is relatively easy. Most of it we'll probably know, but we'll throw in a few extra things that possibly will be new to you. So Sif Al. When did the story of Chanukah happen? The story of Chanukah happened in the second Beis Hamikdash. The second Beis Hamikdash, as we know, was not compared to the first Beis Hamikdash. At least the beginning of the second Beis Hamikdash was a very pashut building, much more simple than the first one. It didn't have a couple of the kelim. There were a lot of different things that the second Beis Hamikdash didn't have. And b'chlal, the Yidden were in a different place during the second Beis Hamikdash. So that was number one. But in the second Beis Hamikdash, the Yidden we weren't kings of our own land, but yet nevertheless they had this the ability to have the Beis Hamikdash. So let's take a look at what happened. The Bayis Hasheni during the second Beis Hamikdash, Kishemalchu Malchus Yavon. Now Yavon, in theory, the technical translation would be Greek, but however, as we know, Greece was not really a major force at that time, and that's not the government that we're talking about. We're talking about Assyrian Greeks. Assyrian Greeks were basically people from, it was after Alexander the Great passed away. So 4 kingdoms sprouted. One of them was Assyria, which was basically where Syria would be. But Assyrian Greeks were people that lived there that were influenced by the Greek, what we call the Western, ideas, which is where the idea of Hellenizing or Hellenization comes in. So that was all Greek culture, but it was really, we're talking about a Syrian government. So it was like a mixture of a couple of things. So, but that's what we're talking about. Now, they were there in Eretz Yisrael, and Gazru Gzeides al Yisrael, they made a lot of Gzeides. What were their Gzeides? So ubitlu dasam. They tried to get the Yidden to stop behaving like Yidden, to do away with the religion. Now, usually if I say what were the Gzeiros that existed then, so everyone, as we asked, I think a couple of days ago, people said three things, right? You guys did. Right? What was it? It was Shabbos, Mila, and Rosh Chodesh. But here, as you see, it didn't stay there only. It extended to Ubitlu Dasam. They tried to get the Yidden to stop doing everything. As we know, where the dreidels come from. Well, that was okay. That was, I guess, Torah. But Torah wasn't one of the three that we mentioned. No, the whole, okay, we'll leave that for now. But the idea is that they tried to get the Yidden to stop learning Torah also. So it wasn't only those three. It obviously was other things, but maybe it started with those three. Those are the big ones. Whatever. Now, they didn't want them to do any Torah and any mitzvahs, not just those three. And it wasn't only, I guess you could say, when you have a ruler, there's different ways they could rule you and crush you. Some could be by your culture, and some could be physically. Here they did both. Number one, it was the Yiddishkeit they were crushing, which was their main thing. But the way that they did that was also Pashtu Yudim b'Mameinam Ovid Neisehem. They also extended themselves, their power, to the finances of the Yidden, meaning all their assets. They freely helped themselves to it. Oviv Neiseim, and to their daughters, they violated them. V'nichnesu lehechel. They also went into the Beis Hamikdash, which was the big, the seat of power, or the seat of kedusha of the Yidden. Upartzu be'pratzes, and they basically defiled it. V'timu pirtzu, we said before, is a breach, like when you crack something. So they broke it. V'timu asatares, and they were metama all the taharis. As we know, famously, all the Maimonim talk about this idea that they didn't do away with the oil; they were just metama the oil. Okay, but we'll leave that for when you learn it in Chassidus. V'tzarlam Yisrael and the Yidden were very stressed and very pressured and very pained by what was happening to them. They pressed them with pressure, a lot of pressure. Until the Eibishter Rachmanis, and he saved the Yidden from them, and he gave them their freedom, their safety, whatever. He helped them. The Gavru b'nei, and how did this happen? The Gavru b'nei Chashmoinoi hakoyanim agdolim v'haragim. The Chashmoinoi that we know were koyanim gedolim, starting from Matisyahu, but Matisyahu's father already. They were all koyanim gedolim, both of them, and then it continued in their family as well. So they came up and they were the tools, they were the path, how the Yidden achieved their freedom. And they saved the Yidden from the Greeks, or from the Syrian Greeks. And then they set up a king from the Koyanim, which, by the way, was not a great thing, because the Koyanim are not supposed to be kings. But okay, either way, obviously it was no one's gonna say they did anything wrong at that point, at least, obviously. Now, after this happened, so now they were ruling Eretz Yisrael for another 200 years, until the Churban, and then everything fell. But that's a very long time. Now, just to give you an idea, after this story, the whole story with Hordis, when the Beis Hamikdash was refurbished and made into the most beautiful building with the blue and the white, with the blue and the green, walls. Whatever, you guys, if you didn't learn it yet, you'll get to it in a couple of years in Gemara. But over there, that happened about 100 or so years later. It was about 100 years later after this story. So the story when the Beis Hamikdash was refurbished was halfway after the story of Chanukah till the Churban. Okay, 100 years later. That's where we're talking about. So it was obviously a very interesting time. Now, when the Yidden were when they won over the Syrian Greeks, so Ve'ibdu, when they destroyed them. So this was Bechamisha ve'esrim mechodesh Kislev Haya. It was on the 25th of the day of the month of Kislev. Now, okay, I'll explain in a second. V'nichnasu lehechol, the Yidden went into the Hechol. V'leimatzu shem etar b'mikdash, they couldn't find any pure oil. They found oil. They found a lot of oil, or whatever, enough. But it wasn't pure oil. And they could have used the regular oil, because everyone was tamei anyways. But as the Rebbe explains, that they wanted the idea of Chanukah is to go beyond sort of what's regular. And here the Yidden, even on Mesiras Nefesh, the Yidden said that we don't want to take impure olive oil, even though we could. We want to tap into the Pach Shemen, the one pure, untouched olive oil, to express the idea of what Chanukah is supposed to be. So they went and they had to get this. But until they were getting new oil, so they found they found one small jug that was untouched. as we know, it was only enough to last for one day. And they lit it, and it lasted for 8 days. Until they were able to crush other oil, other great olives, and be able to bring pure olive oil. Now, it's a funny story because if it had enough, and there's over 100 answers, the whole sefer with hundreds of answers to this, that if there was enough oil for one day, then why were they celebrating 8 days? One day wasn't a ness. Only 7 days was a ness. And the Rebbe talks about it also. So that's another thing. But even if you read the paragraph that we read, it's a very funny paragraph because it says that that they won on the 25th, right? And then they went into the Heichel. So as you'll see later, what's the name Chanukah means? Chanukah. What is Chanukah? So let's read the next small bit and then wait. So hold on. Let's read the next little bit and then we'll come back. So because of this whole thing that they won the war and then they went into the Beis Hamikdash and they lit the oil and it lasted a lot longer than it was supposed to. So because of that, the Chachamim said that these days of the 8 days of Chanukah should be days of simcha, of joy, and halal, and of saying halal. Okay. Now keep that in mind. And therefore we're going to light candles by night, even though really the menorah and the Beis Hamikdash was lit during the day. But here the miracle is going to be that we're celebrating the idea of the light. So therefore we'll do it at night when it's noticeable. And we'll do it, and we'll talk about it soon. And we'll do about it al piskei habatim, by the doorways to your homes leading outwards so that everyone can see, as we'll talk about later. For all 8 nights. And the reason why we do that is so if you want to show and express the nest, then it needs to be done in a place that will be visible to everyone. And that's why we do it at night, and we do it dafka by the door. Now, these days are called Chanukah, like some of you mentioned, for a bunch of reasons. Number one, Chanu Chafei. Chanu means they rested. Right? Like Chania, when you rest. So they rested on the 25th. On the 25th day of Kislev, they rested from their enemies. Okay? So keep that in mind. We'll talk about it soon. Another reason why it's called Chanukah. Number two is that they went into the Beis Hamikdash, like we said, and they were able to rededicate the Beis Hamikdash from what their enemies made it tameh. So because there is an idea of a Chanukah Sabayis, so therefore, some people have a minig that some people have a mitzvah, rather, I should say, that they have more su'udes. They eat more. We'll talk about that soon again. There's another reason also, which is that the Melachas HaMishkan was finished on that day. Now, the Mishkan wasn't finished on Chafei Kislev, but the Mizbeach by the Mishkan was finished on Chafei, and that is even though they didn't dedicate it as in terms of a big Chanukah, because they did it, I think, later. When they, I guess it was Nisan time, when Aaron did the Avodah, Moshe did the Avodah for a week, and then Aaron took over. So, but because to commemorate the idea that the Mizbeach was finished on Chafei Kislev, so again we call it Chanukah for the same thing. Now, here's the thing. What we're reading over here is that it seems like on the 25th they finished the war. They won the war on the 25th, and they rested on the 25th, is what it says. So that means that they didn't even light the menorah until that night or maybe the next day, which is really the 26th. So the story sounds funny. So there's a few people, there's many answers, but the basic ones would be like this, that some would say it's true. On the 25th, we're not celebrating the candles yet. We're celebrating the war. And then on Chafei is when we start celebrating the war. So there's two different celebrations. That's what some people... What did I say? Oh, sorry. That on Chafei they're celebrating the war, and on Chav Vav and on they're celebrating the miracle of the candles. So that's what some would say. But others would say, kind of like what you said, that no, it's Chafei, they won the war, they went in right away, and then they started, right? Also, by the way, it says that they had to clean it and dedicate it, right? So if they were cleaning it and dedicating it, then that also took time. So, but some of them explain, no, they went in right away and they did at least a quicker job, and they already lit it on Chafei. So you do have many answers of exactly of how it could have worked out. But you definitely see that there's this sort of balance between the two miracles that we're celebrating. On one hand, the war, which was it was a ness, obviously, also. But on the other hand, when we actually light the candles, it seems like we're celebrating the candles, but then it should only be 7 days, not 8 days. The Rebbe has his own answer for that as well. Now, why did it take 8 days? Right? What takes so long to crush oil? Yeah, some of you have probably been to what do you call them? Yeah, an olive press. Yeah, so an 8 day journey. You ever went to Israel? Eretz Yisrael is not very big. It doesn't take that long to go get oil. It's a land flowing with the eretz, zavas, chalav udvash, and one and v'shemen. Right. And one of them is oil. There's definitely a lot of olives there. You don't have to travel 4 days to find olives. So they explain. I remember seeing somewhere once that there was that the best oil that they had was in a place that was 4 days away. No, it was the best orchard or whatever was 4 days away. So they were going to do this right. So they went 4 days away. They spent the day getting the oil, and 4 days back. That's 8 days. So they went right away on Chafei. They already went, and then the day after Chanukah, they already had oil in the Beis Hamikdash. So for 8 days, that's what it was. So that would be answer. That would be answer number one. Another answer was that they had to become tahar also. In order to be able to make the oil, they needed to be tahar. So they had to go through the process of getting sprinkled or whatever it was, from tumas mace, whatever it may have been. And then only later were they able to then go and make the oil. Okay, so another similar type of thing. And another one was that for those 7 days, they didn't have time to really even get the oil because their first priority was to clean the Beis Hamikdash. Everything was tameh and dirty. So all the time that they spent getting the Beis Hamikdash ready, and only later did they finally have the opportunity to go and get oil. So you see, there's a bunch of different answers. Okay. So now that we finished with the story, so how do we celebrate this Yom Tov before we get to the candle part of it? So number one, v'yesh l'saper l'nei beisai inyan anisim shenasu laviseinu b'yamim elu. First of all, you should say over the story. The idea is people should know what happened. So number one is that you should be telling over the story to your family of all the miracles that happened. And then he puts in parentheses, this is from the Kitzur, he says, Ayin Yosifun. Yosifun his name was Josephus, is how he's known in America, whatever, in English or in the Western world. But what? But he basically was a Yid, and then he ended up in Rome by the Churban time. Now, he's a very controversial figure to some degree. Some people say he wasn't, whatever, he joined them. Some people say he didn't. He was just forced to write because he was a historian. Either way, he wrote things almost like real time, like during the occurrences of the Churban, of everything that was happening. So some people, he became a little controversial. I believe that I've quoted him a few times. So, but he's definitely a source, that's for sure. And so here he's telling you, now there might be other sources that we can see, which is today, I don't know if people would say we should read it, but back then there weren't too many, weren't too many sources, so people would say that that's where you should look. Sorry, what did you say? Right, so that's also exactly. But here he doesn't say that. Here he says you should look at Yosifus. Okay, either way, so that's number one. Number one is people should know the story. If you just make us think about Hanukkah, but no one knows exactly what happened or what you're celebrating, so that's not going to be great either. Now, even though it's a Yom Tif and we're celebrating, we're going to light the candles and everything, but still the Kitzur says, Lo have a Sudas Mitzvah. Even though you're going to have, like we said before, that some people have a mitzvah, the harbis ktsas besuda, that they eat more things. However, he says on Chanukah, the Su'udah is not a Sudas Mitzvah. Unlike a Yom Tif, when you eat, it's a Sudas Mitzvah. Excuse me, he says Chanukah is not. Now, the interesting, okay, one second. Unless you turn it into a Sudas Mitzvah. How could you turn it into a Sudas Mitzvah? By praising the Eibishter and saying different things, maybe making a siyum or whatever it is. That turns it into a Sudas Mitzvah. Now, the thing is like this. Purim, we do have a Sudas Mitzvah, right? Purim, we do have a Sudas Mitzvah. What does that mean? We have a Sudas Mitzvah. That one of the mitzvahs on Purim is to have a Suda. What's the difference between Chanukah and Purim? They both occurred roughly the same time. Yeah?
Considered
okay, I hear what you're saying. Say Megillus Esther. That's true, but what?
It says in the last, what's it called?
So the Mason.
No, the last,
Yeah.
So, okay, I hear you. That is an answer, I guess you could say. My question is, what's the difference between Purim and Chanukah? But that's not quite it. Meaning, if the Chachamim are establishing it, they could say you can make a Suda also. But the thing is like this: that what was Purim? What was the Nes of Purim? What was supposed to happen on Purim? They wanted to kill the Yidden, their guf. They wanted to destroy the bodies of the Yidden, and and there was nowhere the Yidden could escape, basically. So therefore, the way we celebrate it is with our guf as well. We celebrate it with our guf by having a Su'udah, and this way we're celebrating in accordance with what happened then. Now, on the other hand, Chanukah was a spiritual fight, as we know. They weren't looking necessarily to kill the Yidden, even though we mentioned in the beginning that they made it hard for them physically as well. But their objective was not to kill the Yidden. Their objective was to fight against the religion of the Yidden, against Yiddishkeit. So therefore, the way we celebrate it is in a ruchniistic way also, which is, like I said before, Halal and Tishbaches, which means praising the Eibishter and talking about what happened, and lighting candles, which is a ruchniistic thing, not necessarily having a Su'udah. Now, it happens to be that the minig is that some people, like we said, there is an Indian to have like su'udis to some degree, and some people will try to make sure to maybe make it into su'udis mitzvah by having some sort of, like we said, shinis v'shishpachis. But either way, there is an idea people like to have, gatherings and su'udis, and it's persuminisa, but lav dafka. It's not a su'udis mitzvah to the degree like it is during Chanukah. Let me first finish the sif. We also give more tzedakah during the days of Chanukah, because these days are special days that could be mesaken any pkam, any blemish that we might have in our nefesh. When we give tzedakah on Chanukah, it has the opportunity to fix it. And therefore, we try to give more tzedakah. And especially if you're going to support Torah scholars who have no resources on their own, Torah scholars who don't have any money or are poor, or institutions that need funds, well, then for sure it's even a better thing, especially because, like we know that what did the Yevanim fight against? Like we said, three things: Torah, Avodah, Gemilas Chasadim. So we want to be able to work in those three areas. And number one, obviously learning more, but also, like we said, Torah, you're supposed to learn more Torah in Chanukah if you could. Avodah is I guess you could say tefillah, but that really means halal. So that we express that in halal. And Gemilas Chasadim would be tzedakah and things like that. Now the Rebbe, I think I did see somewhere the Rebbe actually says about this that he never saw a source for this in Chassidus that we do more that these are connected specifically to what was done by what the Syrian Greeks did to us. But either way, there's definitely no harm in doing more good things. Yeah.
So I'm no.
Not really. If any Yid would have said it, they would have written on the horn of a cow, whatever, a keren of a thing, that they're not a Yid. So then they would have been saved. But in other words, what that means is that it was really about their gufim. If they're disassociating with Yiddishkeit, their gufim would have been saved. But it was Haman. It was an anti-Semitism from Haman, and I don't want to get too distracted, but Haman and Achashverosh, where they hated Yidden. They just wanted to kill Yidden. Here, it wasn't like that. They wanted to assimilate the Yidden. It was a different. Why did they hate Yidden? That's a very age-old question from the beginning of time. Well, yes and no, lav dafka. Because, no, remember how the whole story happened. The whole story happened is that the Yidden dafka were assimilated. They actually went to the meal, and they sat with them, and they drank with them, and they were behaving like them, most of the Yidden. And that was what dafka caused it, adrab. So the fact that it wasn't completely, meaning Yidden are different, obviously, because of Yiddishkeit. But it's more than that. It's beyond the scope of this conversation. But either way, so here, let me stop the recording and I'll tell you what's going to happen for today.